Well, hello everybody and happy January 2025. And to our first, I guess this is our first live chat for the year 2025. So let's hope it's going to be a good one. So while we're waiting for everybody to come in, let me say if you're here and if you're a member, let us know that you're here in the live chat. I want to be sure that everybody is connecting. So want to just introduce first of all the way our live chats work, so that those of you who might be tuning in for the first time or who are watching the video of this after it's already happened, want to let you know that the way we do the live chat is we always have a topic, usually a topic that's manageable in an hour's time, and we begin the whole live chat with a video that I made for you to introduce the concepts of the topic. And then our members, our channel members, these are the YouTube channel members now, these are not the Academy students or our regular students. Well, some of them are, but they're specifically our channel members. Our channel members we call Studio Insiders. They ask questions. So sorry we can't have the questions or the chat open to everybody, but if we did, that would go so fast. We discovered early on doing these chats that when we have it open for everybody, it goes so fast we can't see it. It's hard for Roger to pin down the questions, and so that's the reason we started allowing just our members to ask questions. So if you want to be a member, all you have to do is hit the join button wherever you see it in one of our YouTube, in any of our videos on YouTube. You'll see the join button. It's $4.99 a month, and not only do you get to ask your questions during the live chat, but you also get some perks that people really are excited about. You get a free video lesson. We've got 170 full-length lessons on the lessons website, DianneMize.com, and one of those is free every month to our YouTube channel members, the Studio Insiders. And in addition to that, every third Sunday in every month, you get a little bonus clip of some sort that's a composing tip. So we're always composing paintings, whether we realize it or not. Okay, folks, begin to check in. Hello to Ellen, Matt, Carolyn, Courtney, Rich, I see Cheryl, Lisa, Debbie, Rhea, and someone, and Jenny, and someone whose handle is Canale, Canales. Okay, tell me which name to call you by. I have trouble with these.
Omaha.
Huh?
From Omaha, Nebraska.
Omaha, Nebraska. All right. Jenny, Terry, Maggie, Linda, and Candy. All right. Thank you, Candy. I'll try to remember that. Okay. So good to see all of you checked in with us. And here comes more. Carol, Sandy, Dory. All right. If as you continue to come in, if I don't recognize you, please forgive me, because I'm watching so many things at one time. Sometimes I might. Alco just came in. Wonderful. Sometimes I get sidetracked and I forget to look at the little chat thingy poo here to see who said what. All right. So I think the thing to do is, it looks like we got a nice little group already with us, and so I think the thing to do is to get started. Our topic today, value studies versus Notan, or did I call it Notan versus value study? I did, didn't I? Notan versus value study. So this is the topic today, and we'll introduce the video to you, let you form your questions and make notes of what your questions are while the video is playing, and then ask your questions after the video, and we'll get that discussion going. We're gonna have a good time today talking about light and shadow, one of my favorite topics. Okay, there comes Maurice and Patty. All right, Glad to see all of you. It's great. This is a good way to start off 2025. All right, Roger, are you ready?
I believe I am.
All right, let's roll that video, and then I'll see you all on the other side. Most likely, if you've taken any painting classes, you've been taught how to do value studies. Value studies usually look for three major value areas: light, middle, and dark. Or you might also have been taught to create four value areas, usually one light, two middle, and one dark value. Too often, though, we look for just value areas without considering what is causing those areas to appear in the values we find. But we don't see any values at all without light, and that light has to be coming from somewhere. What's really happening in any scene or any setup you paint from is that it's being lit by a light source, and that light source is located somewhere. That location, along with its degree of brilliance, they are what create the values you see, no matter what color is present in the image you're working from. Notice that on this dark-colored horse, we have some very light values. And on this light-colored colt, we have some very dark values. Those values are created by a direct light source, the sun shining from almost directly overhead, a little bit behind the colt. In areas where those rays pass over or are blocked are shadows. These form the value structure of that particular scene, and that can be represented by a simple diagram. A pattern that shows where the shadows are and where the lights are. And that pattern is called a Notan. I'm going to use this photo reference of a sheep grazing on beach grass to show you how easy it is to construct a Notan, and then how we can use it to create the values in our paintings so that they stay true to what the light and the shadow are doing. First, I determined that light source is coming from this direction. One way I can tell that is how the cast shadow is aligned with the back of the sheep. I've already done my preliminary drawing, and I'll be using a wash made of ultramarine blue and Gamsol. And now I'm simply looking for shadows. Nothing but shadows. Of course, I'm starting in this obvious place on the sheep, but now I'm not trying to get value variations. That's not important. The important thing here is just to identify where the shadows are. Place the shadows where they are. All these marks are simply to diagram where I see shadow. Has nothing to do with the values yet. But this is going to be a guide for me when time comes to place the values. If I have those shadows already indicated within this Notan, then it will make it much easier to find the values of the shadows without having to worry about where the values are and what the values are of those shadows. So you see, the shadow as fact includes the cast shadow I'm working on here, as well as the form shadows we see here on the sheep itself. Now, I started with the sheep, and I'll work my way around the sheep one part at a time, catching both the form shadows and the cast shadows, and not trying to keep any value difference at all. Remember, one of the keys to making Notan work for you successfully is to not consider the values while you're creating the pattern for Notan. You will not have to worry about that. You'll be able to identify those values when you come to them. While constructing these value patterns, especially where the darks meet the lights, right, as such as the areas I'm working here, it's important to check the alignment against the photo reference as you're moving along. The angle of where that shadow meets light is important to showing where the sun is. That's causing the light to hit where it hits and causing that cast shadow to hit where it hits. So watching those angles of where the light meets the shadow is extremely important. It's also important as you move along from area to area within the subject itself to not feel that you've got to complete one area before moving to another, but let your eye roam over the image and capture the shadows as you locate them. It doesn't have to be something that starts in one part and then gradually moves from that part to the next and next. Wherever you locate shadow, you put shadow, whether it's on the sheep or whether it's in the surroundings in which the sheep is located. Here I'm beginning to locate the shadow that's on the outside of the sheep. Now, something's very important I want to call your attention to here. Within all those grasses, we have lots of little light shadow, light shadow, light shadow. When we're doing Notan, it's not important that we distinguish or delineate all that. We can create it as one shadow field. And where the lights are the most prominent, we can lift out that area from when we're using the wash Notan, such as I'm using here. Another thing that's important to point out to you is that when you have areas such as we have at the top of these grasses up here, areas where things like grasses or tree limbs or things like that, where we can see the shadow side of them, when they're pointing up into a light area, we don't have to show that in Notan. Notan's purpose is to show us the general pattern area. Now right here, I'm lifting out where I see light in front, the grasses that are in front of those grasses that are in shadow behind them. So because they are part of the light composition, I'm lifting those out. As you see there, now again, I'm checking the angle. Always keep those angles checked when you're working. Even if you don't work a Notan pattern first, the angle where light meets shadow on any image that you're working with is important because it shows where the direction of the light source is. And if you have everything aligned like that, then you won't have discrepancies in your painting. Once the Notan is done, here's how we use it. Areas in shadow will be in this part of the value scale, in the dark part of value scale, ranging from about the darkest dark to about the middle value. Areas in light, or we might say not in shadow, will be in this part of the value scale, ranging from about middle value to the lightest light. It works best if we start in the shadows, just generally block those in, and then go to the lights. With one exception, and that is when we have sky we can see in the background, we can put that in almost any time. Once the major shadows are blocked in, we can begin to go to the transition areas and get those middle values blocked in. And then from the middle values, we can go to the areas in light and block in those areas of light. And we there have our study. Of course, this is just an instructional study, but it gives you an idea of how much flexibility you have when you develop your painting according to the Notan pattern. I'll stop now and let you ask your questions. Okay, I apologize for the commercials breaking in there. We have no control of that, and it always just irks me. I just want to yank out some hair from some of the YouTube, whoever on YouTube thinks that's a good idea to interrupt a video with commercials. I don't like it at all. So, apologize to all of you for that. But in order to be able to do YouTube, we have to do it. So there you go. Cheryl asked a question. Should I be using the Notan to determine the light source or determine the light source first and use the Notan to determine percentage of light shadow to get the best interesting flow of the painting? Cheryl, it's always best to observe where the light source is first. So it gives you an idea, I think, if you can get a sense of where the light source is located. Now, if you're there in plain air, you don't have trouble with that because you'll see where the light source is. But if you're working from a photo, sometimes it's a little bit tricky to see where the light source is. The best way to find the direction of the light source is if you see a cast shadow. And so, like we saw the cast shadow there on the sheep. So cast shadows on this side of the sheep, then the light's going to be up here, or a cast shadow, should I say like this, then the light's going to be up here casting that shadow. So if there's not a cast shadow that's recognizable, just look for where the spots of light seem to be. Now, I think maybe if I kind of give you some clues of what to look for, the major kinds of lights we're going to have when there's a direct light source, it's backlight, which is where the light is. You could almost see the sun. Sometimes the backlight may be a little bit higher up than on the photo, so you wouldn't be able to see it. But what you can see is the part of the image that you see is in shadow, and you see light on the top of the image or coming around it. That's called edge light. So that's backlight, and so then you would know then if you see that gives you a little bit more grasp on where the shadow areas go. Of course, then you're going to have like the 3/4 light that might be coming from behind. It might be a backlight too, coming from behind the image, or a 3/4 light that might be coming to the side of the image, or the 3/4 light might be coming in front of the image, and that might be on either side. Or you might have a overhead light. Now the overhead light as well, as we saw in the horse and the colt early on in the video, the overhead light, if the sun is almost directly overhead, it could be slightly behind, or it could be slightly in front of. So you if you've got a sense of that, sometimes if you just start looking just for the shadow, and you look for the angle of the shadow, if you're doing the Notan, that gives you also the clue. So sometimes you're discovering, as you're doing the Notan, you're discovering where the light source is. So I did say, didn't I, better to locate the light source first. But if it's not possible, if it doesn't tell you, if you don't see enough evidence in the photograph to tell you where the light source is, then just begin to distinguish what's in shadow and begin to make the Notan of what's in shadow. And you'll begin to discover through that where the light source is. So let's see, determine the percentage of light shadow. I don't think the Notan is not the place to determine the percentage, though. Just don't even think about percentage of light and shadow when you're doing Notan. Think of it only as just shadow, whether it's shallow shadow or deep shadow. Just the fact that it's shadow is all we need to know for creating the Notan, because that's where we're going to make the indications with our value, with our darker value. And of course, then that leaves vacant on the canvas or the paper, whatever we're working on, areas where the lights are going to be, whatever the degrees of lights are. So, okay, I hope that made that clear. All right, Dory, did I have that right? You asked, do you do the Notan as a sketch first or directly on the canvas? I always do several Notan thumbnails first, Dory. You can do small Notans like in a sketchbook. I usually do mine in my sketchbook. I want to get a sense of what that pattern is before I commit it to the canvas. So I usually sometimes I'll do several if it's something sort of tricky, or if it's something I don't quite feel I have a handle on. I want to know what that light and shadow pattern are. And so I'll just do it. You don't have to have them very large. You'll be surprised. Only about maybe 1 by 2 inch little thumbnail. You can create a little rectangle in your sketchbook, and just with a black felt tip pen, create the Notan in there. You can do it very, very fast. So I will always do several, at least 2 or 3 of those, and sometimes more than that, depending on what the subject is, before I go and commit it to the canvas. It gives me a better grasp of what to look for. And then she says also to use a tone canvas, a preferred no tone. I don't like a tone canvas. It's just my personal preference. I don't like a tone canvas because I think it interferes. Whatever tone I use will always interfere with my color perception. And I like that canvas to be neutral when I start working with color on it. But I know there are a lot of people that prefer tone canvases for one reason or another, and that's okay. That's just my preference. Don't think it has to be your preference just because it's my preference. She said also, canvas was left out of the previous comment. Oh, don't worry about that. I leave words out of my comments too. Sometimes I even say one word for another word that I meant. That's fine. Rhea, am I pronouncing your name right? I hope I am. How do you determine the light source on a cloudy day? That's a good one. On a cloudy day, the light source is going to be the whole sky. If it's overcast, what's happening there is the sun is radiating or is creating those light rays, and the light rays hit the overcast, and the light rays start dispersing in all different directions, and that's creating an overall light in the whole sky. So most likely, I'm not going to make any rules because I don't like doing that, but look for this, that your lightest lights are going to be on top of whatever images are there, and the shadow areas are going to be underneath. And you're going to notice that on an overcast day, the cast shadows are not going to be as pronounced, and the edges of cast shadows are going to be very, very soft usually. And a lot of times one thing that you can notice when you're determining the shadows on an overcast day, a lot of the verticals, like say tree trunks, or and a lot of times even like sides of houses and sides of barns, they're going to be darker, more in shadow. Now, one thing, depending on how overcast it is, you may see, like if you see on sides of buildings, for example, that seem to be in shadow, it could be that the surface next to the building might be reflecting light back into the shadow. But when that happens, always can use that, structure that as shadow, even if there's reflective light or bounce light going back into the shadow, it's still a shadowed area. And most likely that reflective light is not going to be as light as the lights are in the not in shadow. Usually, I like the terminology shadow and not in shadow, but I know not in shadow is a lot to say, so I would say in light mean the same thing. So, okay, Cheryl says, what is the value of the Notan in overcast light where you don't see much shadow or everything is in light shadow? Well, yes, it is true, Cheryl, that on an overcast day, everything really is in shadow, isn't it? Because the overcast has cast a shadow over the whole world, the whole surroundings, environment. But within that, there are light rays, most likely light rays coming through the clouds, dispersed, and coming through those clouds that are going to be bouncing down on the tops of images. You wouldn't be able to see the images at all if there's not some light there. So, and of course we're always going to have exceptions, like, for example, in a nocturne. But even in a nocturne, you won't be able to see it if you don't have some light. So you have to consider, if you were doing a nocturne, you still have to consider areas where either if it's moonlight, even if it's moonlight, versus areas that are actually shadowed. It just helps to see the structure, helps to see the value structure of the scene you're looking at. So let's see, did I answer that? you don't see much shadow, or everything is in light, shadow, light. Yeah. So anytime we can see a distinction between in values, there's going to be some sort of light that's causing that distinction. It may be a very, very low light, or may be a very diffuse light. But if you will notice, wherever that light is coming, there will be shadow of some sort, and it may be very subtle. Those lights and shadows may be very close to each other in value, but it's very interesting to study that. Just take that one topic and study it, and you'll be surprised at what you're going to discover about the whole light-shadow relationship. Doesn't mean that everything that we do does not at all mean that everything that we do is done in direct light. I just used that example in the video because it was the simplest. I mean, we could do a whole course just on light and shadow. But that's just to get us started thinking about the whole concept of the pattern of shadow and pattern of light being something that we use as a guide for then creating the values of those lights and shadows as we want them to be expressed in our paintings. Ellen asks, is one of the reasons for Notan so that you don't use the wrong values? Example, you see light, color, and shadow. It shouldn't be lighter than middle value. Why wouldn't you just do a value study? The reason for the Notan. Not necessarily just so that you don't use this, just so that you use the right values, Ellen. The Notan structure gives us the value structure, the basic value structure of whatever we're looking at. Without the shadows, we don't see the light. So the shadows, just like 2x4s in a building, sort of. The shadows that we see are where the areas are in shadow. They're not receiving light. That against the light we're seeing is what enables us to see the composition. And every good composition has a good shadow or light and shadow structure. So the main one purpose of Notan is to set that overall light shadow structure. So then it's very helpful, as I mentioned in the video, it's very helpful then to have that structure so that when you're painting, then you have the freedom to develop those variations in value that we know exist in the shadow areas, and that we know that exist in the light areas, and to discover where they go in relationship to each other. So I think you will find it's so different. The Notan itself simply means light and dark. Notan is a Japanese word that goes back centuries and centuries ago. The whole concept of Notan goes back centuries and centuries ago, where it means light dark or dark light. And so that's one reason it's so adaptable, the concept of a pattern of dark light. Just that. The original, oh dear, I can't even think of what it's called now, the yin-yang. The original yin-yang pattern is a Notan, is the original perfect Notan with a perfect balance of light and dark. And so if we use that as a pattern, and within that we develop our value structure. So back to the value studies, they are separate, they are different, they're a totally different animal than Notan. Value studies, we are concerned with showing degrees of value, period. Notan, we are not concerned with showing degrees of value. We're not even concerned with value. We're concerned with the fact that shadow exists there. And we're just finding where shadow exists in all the areas of the composition, or where the main shadow patterns exist. And then within that, we are developing our value studies and our painting studies. So that's one thing that really confuses people. My students still, the new ones especially, we always include the Notan as a part of the process. And my students will invariably say, they will show me a Notan, but it has values differences in it. And they'll say, I was afraid I wouldn't see my shadows dark enough. That's not even the point. You're not supposed to be, the point is not to see the differences in the darkness of the shadows. The point is to discover the fact that there is a shadow there. So if you make that distinction, then you begin to understand that the concept and then how it can be helpful in the whole value structure. Dory asks, does a Notan serve to show the shadow pattern that would be interesting for the eye to follow good composition? Yes. And I would also add in here that you can strengthen the Notan if once you find the light shadow pattern using Notan. If it looks like a weak light shadow pattern, that means either you need to take a different position from to the in your relationship of where you are to the subject, or you'll need to enhance the light shadow pattern, showing the either more light or more shadow, or I have to speak very generally here because there's so many different variations on what we're talking about here, but it is excellent in helping you to get a good composition. Absolutely excellent.
The photo behind you is not a true silhouette.
No.
You can see faces of parts of the of the neck and the head.
Right. You can see on the neck of the horse. That's an example of extreme backlight. So all the light there, it's obviously a sunset, and all the light there is in the back. But there's still, if you look on the horse there along his neck, where it extends about right up in here, and then coming down like that, you see some reflected light on there. So you do see that shadow. You see just a little bit of variation there. Okay, Debbie asks, can you assign a light source on an overcast day in a reference photo to create more variation? Oh yes, and that is so much fun. What you can do there was a really good exercise. In fact, I have a course called oh gosh, what do I call it? Light source. Creating light source. No, it's not that. Creating the light source. No, it's not. It's something about one of the courses on the Academy is about that. It's discovering, is working with the light source. And what we do there, we take a photo under either under overcast or a different kind of light source, and then we take a photo of a similar subject under a direct light source, and we create the painting by using the other light source, not the one that the photo is set in. And that's an excellent thing for you to study. One of the best ways to do that, of course, if you can imagine what's happening, if you can imagine, say if you have an overcast photo and you want to show it in a direct light source, then you want to imagine, where do you want that light source to be? Do you want it to be a backlight, or do you want it to be to one side or the other? If you want it to one side, do you want it to be in front, in the side, and in front of the subject, or do you want it to be more in the side and sort of behind the subject, or do you want it to be behind you so that you've got full light of the subject and the shadows that are not catching the light rays? In other words, then you imagine that it's not a bad idea to do a Notan study, or at least maybe a value sketch would be first of all, where in the value sketch you have created that kind of light source that you want, and then see how your value sketch falls into a Notan, and then apply that to your subject. Yes, indeed, it's called transposing the light source. I think my course is called Creating Light Source. I can't remember. Never mind. It's something. I can't remember the titles. All the titles. It's like a mama's got too many kids. You can't remember all their names. Anyway, yes, that's a fun exercise. You can tell I get excited about that kind where we do actually transposing, where we transpose one scene that's in one kind of light to another kind of light. But you can learn so much from that, and you can just open you up to all kinds of creative possibilities, creative potentials. Cheryl says, thank you for the very interesting discussion on overcast Notan. I really struggle with making the Notan when it's overcast. That means that I think maybe, why don't you make a point, Cheryl, of just doing studies from overcast, especially in these winter days. I bet you get a lot of the overcast there where you are. So why not just take advantage of that? Look for where the dispersed light, where the dispersed light rays. They're very subtle, but look where where are they falling? Where are they striking? Where are they missing? And where the light rays are missing is where the shadows are. So light rays can miss in one of two ways. The light rays can miss, but if the light ray, say, is coming like this towards my hand, if this hand is the sun rays, if this hand is, I guess that's good English enough anyway, if this is representing sun rays and it's coming this way, then it's going to strike right here on my hand. It's going to strike, but not quite so heavily, so that's going to be, but it's still going to be in light right here on my knuckles. But it's not going to strike underneath here because it's going to right past there. That's what light rays do. And where they go right past on shapes, that's called form shadow. That's shadow on images. But then if I have something back here that's blocking that light, as my hand comes this way over the light rays, and something back, this is blocking the light, that's going to cause a cast shadow on the surface, on whatever surface my hand would be sitting on over here. So we have those two kinds of shadows that are included in the shadow pattern, and that is the cast shadow and form shadow. You didn't ask for that, but I didn't charge you extra for it, so that's all right. All right, Cheryl, I have a Notan app, but it starts with 50% light shadow, but then you can adjust the 50% light shadow. This is confusing because it's not necessarily what I'm seeing. Don't depend on those apps. I know they are helpful to a degree, but don't depend on them because, yes, you're right. I've been many times when I'm trying to get a quick Notan to show students, I find that I can't get that app to show exactly where it's in light and what's in shadow. So don't trust those apps. Look for it. Train your eye to see it. You'll find if you train your eye to see it, you don't have to have an app. You can see it anywhere. Just ask yourself where the light rays hitting and where can they not hit because of the position of the sun. If it's direct light, you will be able to locate on the images where those light rays can't hit. Even if you can't spot the shadow, you can train your eyes to see that. It may take a little while, but the more we do it, the more we're able to see it. It's so much fun. And it gives you so much more freedom. Oh my goodness, you just find all kinds of different ways you can use that in your painting. Ellen says, thank you. I want to understand this as I know it's important to you. So it's been worthwhile for me to grasp. Yes, it is important to me. Great. It's really not that complex. It's a matter of experiencing it. The one thing I've realized more and more, the longer that I've been painting and the longer I've been teaching, the more I realize is that, we can watch video after video after video, but until we experience some concept of the way something works, till we actually experience, we never get to know it. And so the best way is just, we've got the world around us all the time, and we don't even have to wait and pull out painting supplies. If you've got a pencil or a pen in your hand and something to write on, you can do this. You can do a lot of these exercises while you're waiting in a doctor's office for an appointment or any kind of appointment. You just don't want to do these while you're driving. That's the only thing I would advise. Cheryl says, you just answered my question with your answer to Dory's question. That's the way it works, doesn't it? A lot of times the discussions that other people will be having cause light bulbs to go on. That's the reason I just love these chats, and I love these group sessions. This is sort of a group session with all of you there, in the members in the chat box. So I love what happens when light bulbs go on as a result of someone else's question. Um, I'll take you up on that and practice Notans. You're right. Great time here for overcast. I thought so. Yeah. And wintertime is a great time. A lot of people resist wintertime, you know, because it ends up being kind of gloomy for a lot of people. We can find potential in wintertime. I think there's nothing more beautiful than winter trees. And I'm not talking about when they're in the snow, just plain old bare winter trees. The way the light hits those trees in all times of the day and in all kinds of weather. I love watching what's happening there and using or finding potential within those for paintings. You can find potential anywhere. It doesn't have to be just something pretty. Cheryl, is a Notan like overcast light when you draw a Notan under indoor lighting? Well, it depends. If it's indoor lighting that is diffused, like a fluorescent light or something like that, it will work very much the same way. A diffused light will. If it's a direct light, you'll notice, like if it's a lamp light, if the light's direct, you'll notice that it will be creating shadows, the same kind of shadows we'll find under the direct light of the sun, distinct shadows. But if it's diffused light, it does work pretty much the same way. So that may be a good study for you there, Cheryl. Good. I want to share while we're waiting for. Let's see how we're doing on time. We're getting very close to finishing this thing up. Wait a minute. Winter trees, desaturated red about very beautiful. Yes. I want to share something with you folks that I just find very, very interesting. I discovered the Notan's concept, many, many years ago, 30, 40 years ago, I guess it was. And this is where I discovered it. This is a reprint that Dover did of a book called Composition Understanding Line. Look at that word, y'all. Notan. Where is it? It's right in there. There we go. And color. By Arthur Wesley Dow. His first publication was done, wait for it, 1899. Back as far as 1899 in the teaching of art and in discovery of art, he was discovering how applicable the Notan principle can be in composing paintings, and that's what this book is all about. This book was first printed in its first form probably 1920. There's a contingent online I've found that uses the term shadow mapping, and I think I even saw somewhere where somebody was claiming they invented it. Well, I did. I will differ on that because they didn't invent it. But shadow mapping as a concept, I prefer the Notan concept because shadow mapping simply focuses on shadow. Notan focuses on both, on the whole thing, light and shadow. And so I think it feels, I don't care what you call it really, but I'm just telling you my preference on that because I just think that's very interesting. Somebody probably did discover it, but they didn't invent it. You know, it's like many things, in many inventions. We can go down through the history of inventions and find in different countries and different cultures, the typewriter was being invented by 2 or 3 different people, and then one got credit for it. And same thing was true with electricity. I don't know all that history, but I've seen documentaries on it. And so yeah, everything is open for all of us to discover. And so if we can discover something, but we might not have been the first one to discover it. So I would be careful about saying that I was the first to discover Notan. Carol asked, picking a frame out, I was surprised to see how much difference a frame color made to complementary painting. Thoughts on how to choose a frame for a painting?
Yeah.
Excuse me for that cough. I couldn't help it.
I think we've discussed about the gold
Mm-hmm.
glazing before. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that a frame for a painting should be its environment. And I know that in a lot of the museums where they have some of the older masterworks and all, they put these huge, big, thick gold gilt frames, and they think that's nice. I don't care for that stuff, but you got to remember that framing is a personal thing, and a lot of people will be framing for their decoration of their room. But I think for a painting, the framing is sort of the environment in which that painting lives, and if the frame doesn't complement the painting, then it's a bad frame, in my opinion. And another opinion is when you look at the painting, if you see the frame first, it's the wrong frame for the painting. Now, I am probably not your best person to give you advice, because I'm pretty opinionated when it comes to the business of framing paintings. I'm really opinionated because I feel I'm a minimalist there. I feel like the minimum of attention should go to the frame. All the frame does is separate the painting from its environment, and that's its only purpose as far as I'm concerned. So that's as much as I'm going to say about that. Just remember, if you see the frame before you see the painting, it's the wrong frame, and let's take it from there. Okay, Carol. Ellen says, Carol, that would be an awesome quick tip video. Someone else has asked about that, but I would say the same thing on a quick tip video about framing. Have we done a quick tip on that? I don't think so.
Different framings.
No, I try to stay away from it because it's such a controversial topic. And a lot of people can get in a huff about frames because everybody's got their own opinion about frames. And my basic opinion is just what I said, that if the frame is the first thing you see, it's the wrong frame for the painting. And the second thing is that the frame should be the thing that separates the painting from its environment. It should complement the painting, not distract from it. So, and beyond that, there are zillions and zillions of paintings that are going to require one frame or another. Okay, Cheryl says, I was told years ago that the frame can make or break a painting. Actually, the painting can make or break a frame, Cheryl. That's my opinion. I don't think a frame can break a painting. A really good painting, you think about some of the paintings that that are just excellent paintings, and there's no frame you can put on that's going to break them. But I think the painting will break the frame. It just said you're wrong painting. It's just like, it's just like a person. A person can be a wonderful person and still have on an ugly shirt.
I have a personal experience with framing.
Yeah?
I gave the art studio two prints of my photograph, and they framed one, and the frame just did not go with the photograph. It did not sell, but the other one, unframed, sold.
There you go. Yeah, and a lot of times the people will buy a painting because of the frame on it. A lot of times they won't buy a painting because of the frame on it. My personal, when I frame paintings, I have a standard frame I use, and I will vary the color. Like I use them very neutral colors, so I vary the color according to which one is best for the painting itself. Because I know most people, when they buy a painting, they're going to take that frame off. They're going to put the frame in they want it on anyway. But okay, I guess maybe if I said enough on that, Cheryl, I hadn't thought of it that way. Yeah, you can't hurt a wonderful painting. You can put it just like putting an ugly shirt on a wonderful person. Okay, Sandy says, when I move on to the block-in stage, I have trouble deciding how to avoid painting details. Okay, has there been a discussion like this in the block-in phase? Only in the workshops, I guess, Sandy. Mainly, here's one way to look at that. Squint. If you squint, when you squint like this, only what you can see in the squint should go in the block-in phase. usually if you can squint, you will squint out those details. So what the block-in phase, now this is my method, my approach to block-in. Other people have other approaches. And we have no standardization for block-in as far as I know. I've never seen one, and I know all the art academies and all those. Everybody's got their, it's pure opinion. But what my approach to block-in is what works. What works for me is to use that block-in phase to just place colors in the values that they belong to be placed in, and not details. Now, if you squint, just squint. If you can't squint, then pull your eyelids down. Keep pulling your eyelids down till most everything goes away, and you will see how it fuzzes everything out. There's your block-in. That's where you should be focused. That's what you should be focused on. I find that when I'm painting, I will be squinting. I'll be squinting so that I'm looking for. I'm not trying to avoid doing details. I'm looking for the values and colors. I'm looking for just that and not details. And then when the block-in phase begins to move towards refinement, that's when we begin to clear things up and to emphasize areas that we want to be emphasized and de-emphasize areas that we don't want to be emphasized, etc. So, let's see, Sandy, I believe I recognize your name from the Academy. All the Academy courses, every Academy course has the block-in phase. So maybe if you can just pay attention to what I'm saying during the block-in phase of whatever course you might be taking on the Academy, pay attention to what I'm saying and how I'm explaining that. Even if you have to watch it 2 or 3 times, maybe you'll get a sense of how that can work. And you have to find that for yourself, because I wish I could give you a formula, but there is really no formula I know that would work for everybody and still give you the freedom that you need for your painting. Okay, let's see, what else do we got here? I learned a lot about frames there, thanks. Terry, just want to tell you that I love the Saturday letter on coloring chords. It was so clear. Thank you. Thank you, Terry. That's a fun one for me. The idea that every color we look at is a chord instead of a note. And what Terry's talking about, I guess all of you who are members know that you probably are all on the mailing list too. You're receiving these Saturday art thoughts that I send out every Saturday morning. And anybody else, any of you who is watching us, is with us, whether you're watching it live or on the recording, you can sign up for my mailing list free. You don't have to pay anything. Just go to DianneMize.com or DianneMizeAcademy.com. Both of them have that. And click on the in the menu on sign up for Diane's mailing list. Well, you'll get there every Saturday morning. You get these art thoughts I send out, single thoughts about something dealing with creating paintings, mostly composing paintings. But when I say composing paintings, I'm talking about creating paintings, all the things that go into composing paintings. And I love the idea of paralleling painting with music. Okay, Dory says, in block-in and underpainting, is block-in and underpainting interchangeable stage? Pretty much, yes, Dory. It pretty much is the same thing, except some people have a different definition for underpainting. I mean, some people would call what I do with Notan underpainting. Say underpainting simply means that something is under something else, and sometimes it's mostly restricted to the layered method of painting that was unique, especially in some of the early in Renaissance and forward into our era, of where the first of all there would be a grisaille, which is just a tone drawing, and then a layer of paint, and then another layer of paint, and some people refer to that as underpainting. For me, block-in is about as close to underpainting as I would do. So, yeah, these terms are horrible, aren't they? If we would just universalize our art terms, we could save y'all a lot of confusion. I've been trying, but one person can't do a lot, especially when so many ideas have been formed in so many different directions over the centuries, actually, especially in the 20th and 21st century, especially since we've got so many ways that you can receive communications now through YouTube and Facebook and all that, and all the others, where people have got their own terminology and people got their own definition of what the terminology means. I just think about underpainting as paint that's under more paint, and so the block in is pretty much, I guess, about as close to underpainting as I will do. I hope it didn't sound like smarty. I didn't mean it to be smarty, but it is just that this terminology is wild. And when you've got one definition of a term and then you hear somebody else give you another definition, sometimes that can be confusing. But just remember, it all belongs in the same pot. So many words that we use mean the same thing. Dory likes block in better. I like it because I think it's more specific. But okay, let's see. Come on up. What was that next one? Fiona. You do a lot, Diane. Your terminology is clear. Well, thank you. At least I try. All right, we're getting close to the countdown, folks. Have you got any other questions? Anything about the whole concept of Notan that still might not be clear to you? You know, it wouldn't hurt just to go play with this idea, and you wouldn't have to set up your studio like I said earlier. You don't have to set up your studio, pull out anything. Just get a felt tip pen and some paper and look somewhere. You can look anywhere. From where you are right there, you can look anywhere where you can see light, where you can see light and shadow, and you will begin to see how the whole light and shadow pattern is a thing in itself, totally separate from value pattern. It's not a value pattern at all. It's totally separate from value pattern. Value pattern belongs in it, but it's not a part of value pattern. Oh, Carol, thank you so much for that. All right, folks. If you got anything else over there, Roger?
We do enough on value studies.
Well, there's not a whole lot to it. Value study. Everybody knows what a value study is. Not so many people know what a Notan is. I think I'm going to plug something right here because it is about Notan, and that is I have a book coming out soon. We don't have a date quite yet, but the date will be soon. And guess what it is? It's called It's about the Notan being a process for guiding the interpretation and expression of lights and shadows. And so it's called The Art of Notan. I will be making an announcement very, very soon about the publication date. And I thought I'd just go ahead and plug that. Why not? I can't see any reason not. Debbie says, thank you so much to both Diane and Roger. It's been a great session, very inspiring, and reminders to do thumbnails and value studies with each new project. Yes, indeed. I too enjoy your Saturday email. Wonderful. Thank you. I'm so good. Your book will be great. I hope so. Well, I'm proud of it, and I think what I'm trying to show there in the book is more very much an expansion of what we've done today about the concept of Notan, how it works, and how we can make it work in painting. But I go into detail on light and shadow, the different parts of light and shadow, and how we use the values to interpret light and shadow like that. So I'm not going to tell you about the whole book right now. But anyway, all right. Terry says, can I get the January code? I lost the email. Terry, email team@DianneMize.com and ask for the January code. I can't give that out because then everybody would get it, don't you know? Okay, let's see, what else? Exciting. Okay, I'm going to read all of your comments, and thank you for all of your comments. You're saying some sweet things, and we love you too. We especially love having you with us on these Sunday chats. So I think our February chat's going to be on the fourth Sunday. Okay. Did you have something else?
And also March. will be on the 4th.
Okay. All right, make a note of that, folks. We are for our for our February and March, we're going to be doing the chats on the 4th Sunday, both February and March of this year, 2025. So make a note of that. But of course, I'll be sending out. We'll be sending out announcements about that. Okay, folks. Thanks so much for joining us. And so we'll look forward to hearing from you throughout the month, seeing those of you who will be taking our next workshop there next week, and also communicating one way or another with those of you who are taking courses on the Academy. So thanks for joining us. Take care, stay healthy, and bye-bye for now.